Hello, everyone. I'm Tara, and I'm 23 years old, and I have lived my entire life in a small Ohio town that feels like it has been trapped in 1997 ever since the Walmart opened. It is the kind of place where everyone still goes to the same diner they went to in high school, and the gossip never really changes, just the names of the people it's about. I used to dream about getting out, and for a while I did. I went to college, got a decent job, and thought that if I could just save up a bit, I could start my adult life somewhere better. So when my parents suggested I move back home to save money, it sounded logical at first, but in reality, it turned into the biggest, most exhausting joke of my life. My parents, Linda and Greg, are both in their late 40s. They have been together since forever. And to everyone in town, they are that respectable, hardworking couple. My mom works in real estate, my dad in maintenance, and they love telling people how they raise their kids right. I have two younger siblings, Caleb, who is 16 and thinks he's the next TikTok star, and Mia, who is 10 and still expects snacks to appear magically when she's hungry. Apparently, I was supposed to be the one waving that magic wand. When I first moved back, I honestly wanted to help. My mom worked long hours, my dad was always tired, and I figured watching my siblings once in a while wouldn't kill me. It started small, helping Mia with her homework, picking Caleb up from school once or twice. But within 2 months, I had somehow become the household manager, chauffeur, cook, cleaner, and on call babysitter. I would wake up at 6 to drive Mia to school, swing back to drop off Caleb, then drive 40 minutes to my full time job. By the time I got home, my parents were already planning their next date night and asking if I could watch the kids for a bit. That bit usually meant the entire weekend. The worst part? They acted like I was living some luxurious, cost free life. My dad once said, "You're saving money by living here, so you might as well earn your keep." Earn my keep? I had cleaned more toilets, folded more laundry, and done more errands in that house than an actual employee would. If I had charged minimum wage for the amount of work I did, they would have owed me more than my college tuition. Money was always strange in our family. My parents were obsessed with fairness, but only in theory. When I got a full scholarship, they bragged about how smart I was, but they also started telling people they saved money on me, which somehow turned into a reason to spend extra on Caleb. He got a used car for his 16th birthday because, according to my mom, it's only fair since we didn't have to pay for your college. When I once asked if they could help me pay off a small remaining loan I took out for living expenses, she told me, "You're more responsible, you'll figure it out." It was like being punished for being the responsible one. Meanwhile, my responsibility became an all access pass to being taken advantage of. If my mom had an open house, she'd call me at work and say, "Tara, could you swing by and make sure Mia gets to her friend's place?" If Caleb forgot his lunch, guess who had to drop everything and deliver it? If they wanted to go out with friends, they would tell me, "We already told Mia you'd be home tonight," as if I didn't deserve a social life of my own. I tried setting boundaries more than once. I'd say, "I can't do the pickup today, I have a meeting," or "I already made plans this weekend." Every single time it turned into guilt. "We're family," Mom would say. "You live here rent-free." Dad loved to add, "You'll understand when you're a parent." My favorite line was when my mom said, "You're just so good with kids, Tara. It's natural for you." Sure, maybe it was natural because I never got to just be a kid myself. I was too busy raising everyone else. It all came crashing down last month. I came home from work on a Friday, totally drained, and found my mom at the kitchen table with a serious look. She handed me an envelope, and for a second I thought maybe it was mail or some document she wanted me to look at. Nope. Inside was a handwritten note that said rent $600 due monthly. I actually laughed out loud because I thought it was a joke. My mom didn't laugh. She said, "Your father and I think it's time you start contributing financially." I asked, "Contributing? I already do everything around here. Driving, cooking, cleaning, babysitting. What exactly do you mean by contributing?" She crossed her arms and said, "That's family duty. This is about adulthood." So I asked, "If I'm paying rent, does that mean I can stop being the free chauffeur and babysitter?" She looked at me like I had insulted her. Of course not. We're still a family, Tara. We help each other." I said, "That's funny, because I haven't seen anyone helping me since I moved back." That's when my dad decided to jump in. He started raising his voice saying I was being ungrateful and that young people today think they're owed everything. I couldn't believe it. I said, I literally do everything in this house for free, and you want to charge me rent on top of that? He pointed toward the door and said, if you don't like it, get out. So I did. I did not even argue. I went upstairs that night, sat on my bed, and for the first time in months, I felt calm. I made a plan right there and then. The next day, I started looking for apartments. It wasn't easy. Everything decent was expensive, and I didn't have much saved since I had been paying for gas, groceries, and half the household stuff already. But I eventually found a tiny one-bedroom about 30 minutes away. It has water stains on the ceiling, the carpet smells faintly like old cat, and the heat makes weird noises when it kicks in, but it's mine. I moved out quietly the following weekend. My parents were out at a family barbecue, so I packed my things, loaded up my car, and left a note on the kitchen counter that said, I'm contributing to my own life now. I didn't want to fight or argue anymore. I just wanted peace. When my mom realized I was gone, she blew up my phone. The first few texts were angry. This is ridiculous. You're overreacting. You'll regret this. Then they turned smug. You'll come crawling back when real bills hit. Joke's on her, I actually started saving money. It has been 3 weeks since I left, and honestly, I didn't expect the silence of my little apartment to feel this good. The first few mornings were strange. No noise, no arguing, no one yelling that they were late or asking where their uniform was. Just me, my terrible coffee maker, and the sound of the heat rattling like an old man's cough. It felt surreal to wake up and know that the only person I had to take care of was myself. But while my life was finally calm, my phone had turned into a war zone. My mom had been calling nonstop, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. At first, I ignored her. Then the guilt crept in, that familiar tug that had always made me cave before. So I answered once. It was the same mix of fake concern and passive-aggressive jabs. She started with, we're just checking how you're doing, and quickly switched to, you really left us in a bind, Tara. That was when I realized she wasn't worried about me. She was worried about losing her unpaid labor. It didn't take long for things at home to start unraveling. Caleb missed 2 basketball practices in the first week because, according to my mom, no one could take him. I almost laughed when she said that. There were 2 licensed drivers in that house, both with flexible work schedules, and somehow they had managed to act like it was physically impossible to get their own son to practice without me. Then came the email from Mia's teacher. She had my personal email from last year when I was the one organizing field trips and volunteer signups. The message said that no one had shown up to pick Mia up after the field trip, and that she had to wait in the office for an hour until someone finally came. The teacher said she hoped everything was okay at home. I didn't even know how to respond because the truth was, it wasn't. It never had been. That night, my mom sent me a long, furious text about how irresponsible I was for not checking in on my siblings. She said, I hope you're happy embarrassing your sister like that. It was almost impressive how she managed to twist her own mistake into my fault, like she always did. Growing up, everything had been that way. Allie, if Caleb forgot something, it was my job to remember. If Mia cried, it was my job to fix it. If my parents fought, it was my job to smooth things over. I had been the emotional janitor of that house for years, sweeping up everyone else's messes so they could pretend things were fine. The next few days were quiet again, and I actually started enjoying it. My job felt easier because I wasn't drained all the time. I started cooking for myself, real meals, not just the leftovers no one at home wanted. I went to the park on weekends, something I hadn't done in years, just to sit in the sun and read. For the first time, I felt like an adult in control of her own life instead of a tired daughter living on borrowed energy. Then my mom texted again. This time she tried to sound casual. She said, we have a wedding to attend this weekend, and Mia really loves when you watch her. Could you come by Saturday? It was such a familiar setup, phrased like a request, but loaded with the expectation that I would say yes, just like always. But something in me snapped. I looked at the message, laughed out loud, and typed back, sure, I charge $25 an hour now, family discount. I didn't even hesitate before sending it. The silence that followed was beautiful. She didn't respond for 2 days. I could almost picture her, phone in hand, fuming that I had dared to treat her family request like an actual business transaction. When she finally replied, all she said was, "Wow, you've changed." And for once, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel the need to explain myself, to soften the blow, or to apologize. I just stared at that message and realized how right she was. I had changed. I changed from being the daughter who dropped everything for everyone else into someone who finally understood her worth. The truth is, I used to believe that helping my family was the same as loving them. I thought if I kept giving, they would notice how much I did, how much I cared. But they never did because people who are used to taking will never stop unless you make them. My leaving wasn't just about the rent or the chores. It was about taking back my own life, about deciding that I deserved peace without earning it through exhaustion. Now I wake up every morning in a tiny apartment with a leaky faucet and mismatched furniture, and it still feels like luxury compared to living under their roof. I pay my own bills, I cook what I want, and when I come home after work, there's no one waiting to dump their problems on me. It's quiet and it's mine, and if that's what changed looks like, then I'll take it. Yeah, I changed from broke and exhausted to employed and free. So apparently, my parents decided that if guilt tripping me directly wasn't working, they'd take it to the next level by spinning a whole new narrative for the rest of the family. According to them, I abandoned them after they asked for a little help. That's the story they've been telling anyone who would listen. The way my mom tells it, you'd think I left a house full of helpless orphans instead of two fully capable adults who just didn't want to do their own parenting. The first I heard of it was when my Aunt Denise called. She's my mom's older sister, the one who somehow manages to stay in everyone's business without actually meaning to. She called sounding furious, like I had just committed a federal crime. Her voice was sharp, and before I could even say hello, she launched into a speech about family values and how it wouldn't have killed me to stay a little longer. I let her go on for a minute before I interrupted her and asked what exactly my parents had told her. She said they told the whole family that they had simply asked me to contribute around the house and that I had packed up and left without warning. According to my parents, I had become selfish and too good for my own family now that I had a job and a degree. I took a deep breath and explained the actual situation. I told her that I had been working full-time while also running that house like an unpaid maid. I told her I'd been driving my siblings everywhere, cooking, cleaning, and babysitting while my parents went out every weekend. And I told her the kicker, that after all that, they handed me an envelope demanding $600 a month in rent. There was silence on the line for a moment before she said, "Wait, you paid for groceries and babysat for free and they wanted rent too?" I said yes, and she sighed so loudly I could picture her shaking her head. She muttered, "Classic Linda," under her breath, and in that moment I felt an entire weight lift off my chest. Someone finally saw through it. Then she told me something that nearly made me drop my phone. My parents had told her that they asked me for rent only because I refused to help around the house anymore. According to them, I had stopped doing chores and was disrespectful and lazy, so they had to make me pay to teach me responsibility. Lies, pure lies. I couldn't even remember the last day I hadn't done something for that house. My mom used to text me detailed lists every morning, clean this, pick up that, make sure Mia's homework is done. And this was while I was working full time. I told my aunt that I still had those messages. She told me to keep them just in case because apparently my mom had also been calling my grandmother, crying about how Tara doesn't care about family anymore. That made me furious, but also sad. My grandmother has always believed whatever my mom tells her, and I could already imagine the disappointed sighs and quiet comments about how kids today have no loyalty. It was the same guilt playbook my parents had used on me for years, only now they were using it on everyone else. So I decided to show the truth. I scrolled through my messages and sent my aunt screenshots of my mom's texts from just the week after I moved out. Messages asking if I could come by to babysit Mia because they had plans, or if I could pick up Caleb from practice just this one time. The kind of texts you don't send to someone who refused to help. My aunt replied with one single message, "Oh, she's going to hate this." The next morning, my phone started blowing up with notifications. My aunt had posted one of those classic passive-aggressive Facebook statuses that everyone in the family knew was about my mom. It said, "Some people love playing victim when their unpaid help finally quits." The comment section was pure gold. Everyone was trying to figure out who she was talking about, but of course my mom jumped in almost immediately. She wrote, "Family isn't about money." I nearly choked on my coffee laughing because I could still see that handwritten $600 due monthly invoice clear as day in my memory. "Ma'am, you literally invoiced me like a landlord." Last week, my mom texted me out of nowhere. The message said, "Your father wants us all together for Thanksgiving." I stared at it for a while, debating whether to even respond. The last time I had been in that house, I left with my car packed and my patience long gone. I wasn't planning on going back anytime soon, but then she followed up with another message that said, "We miss you." That one hit differently. For all my frustration, they were still my family, and part of me wanted to believe that something had changed, that maybe they missed me as a person, not as free labor. Against my better judgment, I decided to go. Thanksgiving morning, I packed a pie I had bought from the grocery store and drove over. The closer I got to my parents' house, the heavier it felt. The place looked exactly the same. The faded shutters, the cracked driveway, even the dent on the mailbox from when Caleb had tried to skateboard down the hill last summer. It was like time had stood still, but I hadn't. When I walked in, I immediately understood why my mom had been texting so often. The house was a mess. Dishes were stacked high in the sink. The dishwasher door was open and half-loaded. Laundry was spilling out of baskets in the hallway. And the dining table was covered with half-unpacked groceries and unopened mail. It looked like chaos frozen mid-motion. My mom greeted me like everything was normal, cheerful voice, wide smile, pretending the house wasn't collapsing behind her. Caleb was lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone, and Mia was watching some loud cartoon on the TV. They both lit up when they saw me, but before I could even put my coat down, Caleb asked if I could drive him to a friend's house. Real quick. I asked where Mom was, and he said she told him to ask me. I just smiled and said, "Sorry, I'm not on shift today." He blinked like he didn't understand at first, and then I saw the realization hit him. I think part of him still believed that if he asked nicely, I'd slide back into my old role. The rest of the afternoon was a weird blend of nostalgia and tension. I could feel my mom watching me as I moved around the kitchen, waiting to see if I'd jump in and start doing things like before. I didn't. I just sat down at the table, offered to help with one dish, and that was it. I wasn't falling back into that trap. When dinner finally started, it was awkward. The air felt thick, and everyone was trying to pretend things were normal, but it was clear that nothing really was. My dad tried to make small talk halfway through the meal. He said, "So, paying your own bills now, huh?" I nodded and said, "Yeah, it's great. Rent's only $700 and I don't have to drive anyone anywhere." The room went silent. You could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. My dad looked like he wanted to say something, but thought better of it. My mom tried to change the subject immediately, asking me about school, but the tension lingered. For the rest of the dinner, everyone just focused on their plates. I sat there eating my mashed potatoes and thinking about how peaceful it felt, knowing I'd be going home to my own apartment afterward. After we finished, I helped clear my own plate, but didn't stay to clean up the entire kitchen like I used to. I said my polite goodbyes and started heading toward the door. My mom followed me into the hallway. Her voice was softer than usual when she said, "You really won't come back?" I turned to her and said, "Mom, you taught me that adults pay rent and take care of themselves. I'm just doing what you wanted." She didn't have a comeback this time. No guilt trips, no lectures about family duty, just quiet. For once, I think she finally saw me as an adult, not a built-in helper. As I stepped outside, the air was cold and sharp, and it felt cleaner than anything in that house. I looked back once before getting into my car. Caleb was standing at the door with Mia beside him, holding her hand. They both looked tired, older than their ages, and when I caught Caleb's eyes, he mouthed something that looked like lucky. That one word stuck with me all the way home. When I got back to my apartment, I unlocked the door, kicked off my shoes, and felt that familiar wave of calm wash over me. The quiet didn't feel lonely anymore, it felt earned. I lit a candle on the small table by my couch, cinnamon and vanilla, the kind that makes the place smell like a fresh start, and sat down with a plate of leftovers I had packed for myself. The flickering light filled the room, and I couldn't help but smile. This was mine. My bills, my peace, my life. No unpaid chores, no guilt, no invisible expectations hanging over my head. For the first time, I realized that I didn't owe my family my exhaustion just because we shared DNA. I could love them and still protect myself from them. I could miss parts of them without wanting to go back. That was the difference between guilt and growth. Now, every time I come home from work, I light that same candle, breathe in the quiet, and think about how far I've come since the day they handed me that rent invoice. Freedom doesn't always look glamorous, but it sure feels good. It smells like clean laundry that I only have to fold for myself, and dinner dishes that stay right where I leave them. Freedom smells like peace, and like not being anyone's unpaid intern anymore. And yeah, AITA, because I feel zero guilt.